Hey, welcome to the official Kraken YouTube channel. Today we're on video tutorial number 10, and we're going to be building the KV5TT kit today.
Okay, we're on bag I, we're on page 26, and we're in block 50. We are going to be assembling the battery box onto the chassis, doing a little bit of air filter building and throttle linkage.
Alright, jumping into bag 50, we're going to go ahead and install the battery case onto the chassis. So once you've got all 4 screws screwed in on the underside of this chassis right here, we're going to go ahead and fit this front plate on top. You're going to see that the plate has 3 notches on the bottom as well as the bottom of the chassis. It's got 3 slots to fit it in right there. And basically you're just going to slide this clip into the slot that it has built in, and it will clip and snap, and you'll know it's in.
Okay, we made it to block 51. We're going to be installing the throttle rod and setting the gap. Nate, let's go ahead and get started. We want to start with the rod itself. The first thing that we're going to do is we are going to get one of these rod stoppers and slide it on. Just kind of slide it on loose and get it right to about there. Okay, next we want to take our T-wrench, small T-wrench, probably 1.5 driver. He's going to screw the set screw into the stopper. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to just tighten it just barely enough, because you're going to be adjusting this as you go. Okay, now slide on your spring. Okay, next you want to use your throttle pivot. Slide that on. Make sure that there's a top and a bottom here, so let's take a look. Okay, now put your brass fitting into the throttle pivot. It just slides from the top down in there. Okay, now we're going to use our silicone crush tube. Slide it on there. And then last, again, we're going to prime the collar, and we're also going to prime the set screw itself, and then we're going to use blue thread lock. All right, Nate, we're going to set the gap, the throttle gap at the end of the rod. We're going to set it between 3 and 5 millimeters. We're actually going to set it at 4 millimeters, but what you're going to need to do is this is just a guideline. You're going to want to install the throttle onto the car with the motor in place, and once the motor's in place, you can actually get a finer tune adjustment to your motor specification. So he's got the first collar tightened in place, and then he slid everything down. You don't want any tension on the spring, just where it comes together. Get the collar just up against it, and then he's tightening that back down. And that's the throttle assembly completed. All right, guys, block 52. What do we got here, Nate?
So we're going to be working with our air filter housing, the grill, and an O-ring, and we're just going to be combining all of these together. So what we're going to do is we're going to fasten the O-ring onto the bottom side of this grill. Just make sure that it fits around the little groove right here, and once it's in its inlet, you can just rest the grill on top of the housing, like so. Alrighty, moving on to block 53.
In block 53, we're going to be oiling up our inner filter. We got our air filter cage to hold it in place, and we got our oil here. Basically what you want to do is you're going to coat evenly the oil inside and out. You're going to allow it to dry. You want to check and see if there's any dry spots on there, and make sure it's thoroughly dry before you install. Slide the foam on, and then your cage. There's kind of a channel that you need to follow. The plastic, slide it on into the groove, and you slide it on. Even out your sponge. Make sure that there's 2 little clips on the bottom here. Clip and clip. Make sure both of those have seated properly. And that's it. Get started on block 54.
So here we're going to be working with our outer air filter sponge, and when we put it on to lay over the inner air filter sponge, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that it inlays in this little groove that is cut out right here. So you can go ahead and set it on, and then once it's set on, you're gonna make sure that the edges are pressed in nicely. We don't want anything to be hanging over the edges, because just as long as it's nice and tight, then we'll be good. So I'm gonna go ahead and check all the way around. That looks fine. And now we can start working with the cap. So this cap right here will have screw holes they're gonna go on top of this inner cage. So just go ahead and lay it on there. And if we put some pressure on it, we're gonna basically do the same thing that we did with the bottom part of the sponge. Just smooth it in and make sure that it's all nicely encapsulated here.
Okay, go ahead and use your button head 3x8 screws to secure it in place.
And then from here we can just hand tighten. All right, that's it for block 54.
Here we are in block 55. We're going to be finishing installing the air filter housing with gasket and screws. To get started, let's go ahead and take our gasket and lay it on top of the air filter side of the housing. There are groove channels, and there are also a right and a left side of the gasket. The side of the gasket that we're looking for has indent into it, and that slides into the grooves of the housing. You want to make sure, like Nate's doing, he's running his finger all the way along to make sure that the gasket is set in place and around all the screw holes, so that when we mount it, we don't have any leaking. We want to have the air filter housing be airtight so that we don't have any motor issues. So he's got that seated in there nicely. The next thing that we are going to do is we're going to install the screws that hold the air filter to the motor. Okay, Nate, so go ahead, and we're going to be using our KV5TT washer, and then our pinch washer, and then we're going to use the 3348 button head 5x50 screw. It'd probably be easier if you put the screws onto the screw itself first. So go washer first onto the screw, and then pinch washer. Now go ahead and slide that down into the housing, just like that, and do the same on the other side. Just like that. Now we're going to take the top portion and we're going to set it down on there to make sure that the gasket does not move. You're going to set it down in place. Make sure there's no gap all the way around. And you're going to take all your supplied screws and go all the way around. You want to make sure that you use a light torque setting, whether you're going to be using a hand drill or a T-wrench, so that you don't strip out the housing. So now we're going to use our last screws to get this thing airtight. You want to put the O-ring onto the screw first, slide it on there. Go ahead and check the torque with your T-wrench to make sure that they're tight. Again, we don't want any air coming out of here. And that's it. Hey guys, we're at the end of bag I into block 56. In block 56, we went ahead and installed the air filter housing onto our motor, and we also installed the throttle linkage onto the motor. Now the engine is not included. You're going to want to use your own supplied motor. That's the end of bag I.
Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned to our next tutorial when we build bag J and install this motor into our chassis. Be sure to like and subscribe, and be sure to hit that notification bell to be notified of our next posts. See you later.